G'day and welcome back. And welcome back to part 2 of this Aristocrat radio. I think it's similar to a Model 502. In part 1 we saw how huge the cabinet was. I found a mystery plate inside one of the IF transformers. I was able to get the radio to work after I found a faulty resistor. So the radio is working. This week I'm going to address the rust on top of the chassis. It's a bit worse than I thought, so I'm going to have to repaint it. I'll remove some components before I take it out to the workshop. I'll start with the valves and I might take this dial off. I'll start with the rectifier, and it's a bit of an odd one because it's probably a 5x3. It has an octal base. It would have originally been an 80, I would think, and that's got a 4-pin base. Looking at it, this octal base does look like it's been fitted in the factory. I think the 5x3s came out in 1935, so that would make this radio a bit later than 35. It doesn't matter if it's a 5x3 or an 80, they're the same valve, just a different base on them. I'll take off this dial plate. There's a screw down the bottom, and around the back there's 2 screws here that are holding it to the tuning capacitor. Now this first screw is not even tight. I'll wind the capacitor over and I should be able to get to the second screw. This one's tight. I'll undo this bottom screw, and for spacers it looks like they've used those little bookbinding nuts we used to see back in the early days. This should just come off like that. There's 4 screws holding this tuning capacitor on. I'll take them off, and on the bottom there'll be 3 connections. I'll just unsolder those and I'll be able to remove it. That's as far as I need to go in here. I'll take this out the workshop and continue from there. I'm at my workshop now and I'm going to repaint the chassis. As usual, I'll have to remove the covers off the IF transformers and antenna and oscillator coils there. I'll lift the transformer away a little bit. There's 3 cups here that hold the shields for the valves. I'll take them off, otherwise, I've got to try and sand around there to clean the rust off, so I'll take them off and make it a bit easier for me. The volume and tone controls need to be undone and pushed back. There's a antenna and earth on the back, plus the little switch there. The chassis is rusted, but I managed to sand a bit off the corner here, and it's quite smooth underneath. I'll treat the rust, of course, but I think it'll come up okay. I'll start by removing these covers. These should all come off now. This is the second IF can, not the one I looked at in part 1, and it also has that disc in there that affects the coupling of the 2 coils. It also is not connected to anything, it's just cut off. That was pretty easy, only took a few minutes to get all that off. I won't show the rest of it, it's only a matter of undoing these and lifting the transformer a bit. I'll come back when I'm ready to start sanding, and I'll see how well that goes. I've removed everything I need to, I think. I even let these go. That one's floating. The transformer has just been held off the chassis there. I've got some pretty coarse sandpaper here, so I'll give it a rub back and we'll see how much it's going to need. Here's the bit I just sanded, and it's come out good. It's nice and smooth. I was a bit worried it was going to be pitted from the rust, but I think it's going to be okay. So I'll do the rest of it and then I'll come back. I've sanded all this back. I've even done the front, back, sides. I've done everything. So I'm going to put some rust converter on it. And I've got this Stuff Action gel. It's probably phosphoric acid in one form or another. And we just paint that on and leave it there for 30 minutes and wipe it off with some water or wash it off. And it should convert the rust and give a surface ready to paint. So leave this with me. I'll come back when it's ready to paint. It's been about half an hour and that's done its job. It's gone sort of a black colour where the rust is. And it needs to be cleaned off with some warm water, which I've got in a bucket here. So I'll wipe this off and I'll just change the rag a few times, make sure I've got clean water all the time. And I might even run over it with some metho, just make sure it's all off. So once again, leave me with it. I'll get it all cleaned up and then I can start masking up. That's cleaned up really nice. I'm happy with it. I used some denatured alcohol, methylated spirits, and just made sure it was all clean and got inside or got up any surplus that dripped inside. The next step is to mask it up, and if you've seen my videos before and I've done this, I use these magnetic fridge magnet things they send out. And all I do, and I can mask this whole row of stuff in one shot. There you go. So all that's masked up now. I'll have little square ones, I'll just put them in there. Same over here and up the back there. I'll wrap something around these coils so they don't get paint all over them. That wire doesn't matter, it's got to be replaced, so I just leave it there. I'll mask up the transformer. As I said, there's a gap there, so I can just mask around that and the paint will go underneath. This, I'll just put some masking tape inside there, around the bottom there. That'll hold that up. A bit of the magnetic sheet in there. See if I can get one in there. There we go. So really easy way of masking these up. Some tape around the transformer as well. I've folded a square of paper in there and I can just seal that in. The rest of it will be the same, just popped little bits of magnet in there. Another one there. And it's all taped up. I'll put one across there. I'll have to use masking tape on this cutout here. I'll finish all the masking off and it'll be ready to put some paint on. It's all masked up. I've got it on the carousel. I'm ready to give it a coat of paint. I went to the paint shop and they mixed up some paint for me. So it's pretty close. In fact, it's a very good match. So I'm going to take the camera out. I'll give this a spray. I'm going to use my spray gun. I'll give it a spray and we'll come back and have a look and see what it looks like. Oh, there's one coat on and it needs a second coat, of course. I might rub it back a little bit between coats just to try and smooth it off a little bit. But the colour's good, so I'll let that dry and I'll give another coat tomorrow. I've given the chassis a second coat of paint. In the meantime, I thought I'll clean some of the ancillary gear up. I've put this through the media blaster and removed all the rust. I'm not going to do any more to it because I want to sort of maintain the patina if I can. A bit hard when you've repainted the chassis, of course. What I thought I'd do was pull this apart. It's very tight. Well, it's hard to move. Now I could just grease it up and put a bit of oil in there, but I think I might pull it apart. It's pretty dirty back behind here where I can't get. So I'll take these out, and these should just pop out like that. And there's a bolt on the end here, a nut I mean, and I've had to drag out my old Whitworth spanners, although I'm not sure that even fits. So that gets loosened, and I'll get a screwdriver in there, and we should be able to remove that nut. Now I think there'll be a bearing in here, like a ball bearing. There it is. Now if I turn this way, I think I can pull it out. Apparently not. I don't want to lose the ball bearings, eh? I hope I can pull it out. Oh, they're going everywhere. There it goes. That has a build-up of grease and dirt in there, and I can clean out in there. It's got the old grease in there. I'll get a bit of solvent in there and I'll clean it out and clean this up, and I can reassemble it. Now as you just saw, I cleaned all this up and I can put it back together. I think I need to put the bearings in first. I'll have to try. So I'll put the little ball bearings in there, or the bearing balls. Alright, that's the last one. I'm not totally confident with this. I'll put a smear of grease over it so they've got half a chance of staying there, which they're not doing. Will it all go together? Alright, I can't get that in. I'm going to take maybe the top two ball bearings off here and see if that'll let me get it in. And hopefully I can get them in afterwards. There it is. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to access the groove while this rotor was fitted, but it looks like you can. Just making sure none of the little ball bearings have escaped. They're all in there. Okay. I can put the thrust bearing in, so a bit of grease in there. The ball bearing in. I'll over torque it a little bit to bed the bearings in, and then just back it off. There's no movement, that's perfect. I'll slip the little contacts in here for the rotor, and there's a couple little detents. There's a hole there, a little bit of a ridge in that hole there, and they just line up like that. Same on the other side. There we go. That's nice, just got a little bit of tension there. Yeah, that feels good, much better. Next thing to do is the tuning dial assembly. I'll just take the pointer off, and it's missing the glass, of course, and it looks like they've just bent these tabs over to hold it. Not sure about that. Yeah, just broke off. That's what I said, I'm not sure about that. I have to come up with something else now. This plate's held on with just 2 screws, top and bottom. I'll get them out. That leaves this part, and this is a typical little mechanism where they spring load a couple of washers and squeeze this crescent plate here, and then you can tune it. But it does slip. It does slip. Okay, it's not going to slip, but it was slipping. So I'll pull it apart and clean it up. We'll see what I can do with that. I'll go and clean that up, and then I should be able to push that out there. Now that's cleaned up, so that'll come out there. We'll see what this is made of. Now there's the 2 washers, and there's a boss there with a screw holding it together. So if I undo that, is it going to come off? I'll take that outside and see if I can pull it apart. I tried, but I can't get that apart. It looks like this shaft is pushed into this shaft, and then the screws put in, and the washers are in the middle. Looking at the washers, I really can't see anything wrong with them. They're quite tight, they don't look worn, so I'll have to just see how it goes once it's all cleaned up. I've cleaned all the grime off this, and I put it in the media blaster and just took off all the rust as well. It's a pretty simple matter of putting it back together. There's a little anti-hysteresis spring there that goes in that little cutout there, so that just keeps a bit of load on the 2 gears there, just to limit the hysteresis while you're trying to tune it. So I'll lube all this up and put it together, and I'll see if it works any better with it all cleaned up. I've assembled it, and I've mounted it on the capacitor I just finished lubricating, and it's working pretty well. So it's quite accurate there. I ended up bending this bracket a little bit so that the shaft pushed a bit further onto this little plate here. So you know, I did adjust it a little bit, but it's come good, it's very good. I've let this dry for a couple of days, so it should be hard enough to, you know, reassemble without damaging it. I cleaned up all the other gear, the aluminium cans here. I just used hot water and a soft scourer to remove the dirt. I didn't want to make them polished and shiny. The colour's good. It looks a bit of a mess now with all the tape and stuff on it, but when that's all taken off, I think it'll look all right. So I'll start taking that off. That looks a bit better with all the masking removed. You can see the colour now. These magnets, of course, you can just reuse them. I've used them a number of times. I'm going to touch the black up around this transformer. I know I should, and I should just leave it like that, but I can't help myself. I'll just put a little bit of black on there, then I'll take it inside and I can reassemble it. I have the chassis inside, and I'm going to put everything back together. I'm not going to show it all. It's just nuts and bolts. I'll put bits in, put the nuts on, tighten them up. I'll come back when it's time to do the electronics. I do have to put new wire on here and here. I've got some wire here, this yellow wire, and I'll make sure I remember to put it through the hole first and then solder it on there, because it's just too hard trying to come back the other way. I'm going to have trouble with this one trying to feed it through into here. Anyway, I'll come back in a few seconds and hopefully this will all be populated. I've put most of the parts on. It still has that tuning capacitor to go on. I'll do that a bit later. I've only cleaned all these aluminium bits up, didn't polish them as I said earlier. The case paint looks good. It doesn't look too glossy. It's subdued enough so that it doesn't look completely restored. So I think when it's in the cabinet, I think it'll look alright. The next step is to do some of the electronics. And if you recall, the person that did this before me put in a great 100 microfarad capacitor here and just completely eliminated that one. So it still had some hum in it. So basically that's the rectifier, transformer rectifier section. The rectified AC comes out here, goes to that capacitor and gets filtered a little bit. It goes off around here to that large pin there on the socket on the back of the radio. It goes through the field coil in the speaker, comes back here and goes on to the second capacitor here. So I'll flip the radio over and I'll work out what to do. I've flipped the radio over. That's the speaker socket at the back. That's the rectifier, and this wire here is carrying the rectified AC, and that's that wire there. So I need to connect the capacitor there. I'll need to run a wire to the capacitor when I mount it. So this is going off to the field coil. It goes through the field coil, comes back here. This is the other fat pin, and I need to attach a capacitor to there and also run it off to provide the B+. The original two capacitors mounted in these two holes here, and there's a screw here, and I can mount a little tab strip here and mount my little capacitors there and run some wires over to the speaker socket. So I'll do that. I'll come back when it's all done. That's all complete now. I have a wire running from there to this capacitor, a wire running from here to this capacitor, the field coils between the two. This one goes to that green resistor that used to be here. This one goes off to the antenna coil for the B+ and B+ to the oscillator coil. I put in a tag strip here. That green resistor is no good. I can't save it. It's got breaks, several breaks along it actually. So I'm going to just mount some resistors on here. I went through and checked these resistors here. Okay, that one's okay. That one's no good. That one's no good. And that one's no good. So I've got to change those. The capacitors here have to go, of course. I'll probably leave these yellow mustard caps up here. They tend to be pretty stable. My plan now is to refit the tuning capacitor. I'll put some temporary resistors here, or just clip them on with clip leads, and I'll put some power on, and hopefully it's still working. Then I'll come back and I'll change these other components. I don't want to do them all now in case I've made a mistake somewhere and it's not going to work. I don't want to make it difficult to troubleshoot if I've started changing all the bits. I'll put the tuning capacitor on, put the valves back in, and we'll give it a go. The tuning capacitor is installed, and I've put the caps on the valves here. This one was backwards. I had to rotate it. The wire was coming out that side, which no good. It needs to come out there. I went to the cupboard and retrieved the speaker for this, and I thought the cone was missing on it, but that was a different speaker. The one for this one is intact, but it's pretty heavily repaired there. I may need to put a new cone in it. It may work as it is. So at this point I can put some power on. I'll put the rectifier in. There's still wires not connected at the bottom, but this will test the little filter section that I worked on. The rest of it I didn't really touch. So I'll just make sure that that's going to work. This is the output valve socket. So this one here is the plate. I'll put my probe in there and we can measure the plate voltage. I'll ground the other side here. I'll put the power on, dim bulb, and we should read this pretty quickly because it's a directly heated rectifier. So we've got, it'll be way too high because there's no current being drawn anywhere else. So 430 odd. Bulb's not on. What are we pulling there? 24 watts. So I reckon that's pretty good. I'll refit all the valves. I'll flip it up. I need to put some resistors in to replace that green wire wound resistor I took out in part 1. And we should be able to power it up, and hopefully the radio will work. I'll also put the shields on just to be sure. If you saw part 1, you'll know that this resistor was no good. It had about 3 breaks in it, I found. So I can't use that. It's 15k, the total resistance. So I've got some resistors here to simulate it, and that adds up roughly to 15k. And about halfway I've taken off a tapping, and that goes up here, and that's for the screens of the first two valves. So it should all work if I haven't done anything wrong. I'll put the power on it. Dim bulb, I'll keep it on dim bulb until I'm happy that this is all going to work. I'll give it a minute to warm up. I can hear something. It's not very loud. I'll go to full power for a second. That's about all I'm going to get out of it. That speaker doesn't sound good at all. It was working better than that before I did all that work on it. I'm very suspicious of this speaker. That's the only thing that's changed from when I did it last time, so maybe I'll just wire in the old test speaker and make sure that's not the problem. I've taken the old speaker out. I have my test speaker here. I've just quickly wired it on the back of the socket there for the speaker. I'll try that and see if it makes a difference. Once again, I'll let it warm up. There it comes.
We do have a text that's come from Barbara in Centenary Suburbs who says that some major health issues years ago and organised a birthday party for her daughters and friends. She hired a clown, but hadn't realised...
Alright, that's all I wanted to do. Just make sure I hadn't mucked anything up when I was playing around in here. So I'll just leave it at that. What I'll do now is replace the capacitors and the faulty resistors that are in here. One of these is nearly twice its value. So I'll replace all those, and when they're all replaced I can then work out what I need to do with these resistors to get the right voltages. I'll do all that off camera. I'll come back and then we'll look at these resistors. I'm still changing the capacitors and resistors, but I was changing the capacitor on this tone control and I thought, no, this is not working very well. It was a bit flaky. It's 500k, so I thought I'll pull it out and maybe try and clean it up. I have it fully wound to minimum, and we are reading a 0 there, so it's a short. And if I turn it, yeah, see, it's all over the place. I'll go full turn or full travel. It should end up on that 50 there, which it is, so it's about the right value, but not travelling very well. I could try just spraying it, but I'm not sure I can get in there. There's not much of a gap in there, so I'll just peel it back. Hopefully that's enough. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it looks pretty grimy around there. I have some deoxide fader there. I'll just wet one of these little cleaning pads, rub it around the carbon track there. Yeah. And there's also a track inside that needs to be cleaned up. I'll dry that off. I didn't actually mean to put so much on. That looks pretty good. I'll test it again. I'll connect the meter again, and it's fully anti-clockwise. Let's see what it does. That is much better. Very nice. Fantastic. Alright, I'll reassemble this and put it back in and continue with my capacitor resistor replacements. I've completed recapping. As I said, I've left those two mustards up there, changed some resistors around here, tidied up. There was a flying capacitor across there for the tone, and of course we did the tone control a bit earlier. I still have a temporary mains cord there. I'll change that later on. Here's the casualties list. I haven't got that big 100 microfarad capacitor in here, but that's the rest of the stuff. I'm going to put some power on. It'll work. I don't have any doubt of that. And I've got some resistors set up here. I went online and used the voltage divider calculator and worked out this is 15k in total, and I've got about 8k here and about 7.2 on that side. That's where the tap off goes to the screen grids. I don't expect this will be right because the voltage divider doesn't take into account load, so I think this will be wrong, but it'll get us going, get us a datum point. Put some power on. It's on dim bulb. Looks alright. Bulb hasn't come on. It's a little bit of light there, but not too bad. It's warmed up. We'll see if it'll work. Ooh. Doesn't sound very sharp, but it's picking up stations.
The event, plenty of chances here with a field to run, and 7 of them in single figures on the fixture.
Yeah, I'll put it on full power because it sounds a bit distorted.
Below the curve, Aston Tommy and Frisco Joe has the outside.
We think of breakfast like a roller coaster.
We start with news, we end with news, but it's the twists and turns and your stories in between that bring the magic moment.
It still doesn't sound fantastic. Anyway, we'll sort that out later. But it is working. I'll connect some multimeters on here and we'll see what voltages we've got. I put a meter on the plate of the 57 valve and it'll be the same for the 58. This meter is measuring what's going into the screens of those 2 valves. It's going through that wire there, that connector. When the plate's at 250, we're looking for about 100 on the screen. I have 2 meters set up. That one's reading the plate, this one's reading the screen. I'll put some power on. Still on dim bulb. Oh no, it's on full power, sorry. So I'll let it warm up and we'll see what we come up with. I've let the set warm up for about 5 minutes. It's got to, 243 on the plate and 90 on the screen. So the screen could be a little bit higher. I can shuffle some of these resistors around. I'll play with these until I get something a bit closer. I swapped the 4.7 with the 3.9 here, so that's gone over there. So a little bit less resistance on this side of the center tap. And now we've got 251 and 99. That's perfect. I'll solder these into the little tab strip I put in yesterday. I'll come back in a few seconds. I mounted the resistors and that's all working perfectly. The voltages stayed the same. And the radio's working well.
Now as well, so let's turn our attention.
I still have one thing to do before I finish up this week, and that's refit the tuning dial. I got the tuning dial and it just goes in there and connects to the tuning capacitor. And then it's got a single bolt in the bottom through this unusual array of brass bookbinding posts or nuts. That took a little bit of aligning to get all that lined up. It's on there now. So just the nut on the end. I'll tighten that up and then we go and adjust the top part. We're back up the top again. I have the tuning capacitor completely closed and I'll wind that all the way down and just take it off a little bit. I can get a screwdriver in there. I should be able to nip that up. And hopefully I can tune it. That's it. I can hear the capacitors bottomed out and I've still got a bit of range there. I think that'll be close enough for the time being. That's it for this week. I still have to make a dial glass. That speaker, I'll need to try and repair it or maybe even recone it. And of course there's still the cabinet to clean up. So it's a little bit to do yet, but I hope you enjoyed what we did in part 2 and I hope you join me next time for my next radio adventure.